Okay. So, technology. Okay, so just back in to manager's report. So the first and only item under this, again, we're paying bills, Jim's checking into things. The question that I want to pose to the board right now is that we actually do have permission at this point to open the club, but doing so, according to the city attorney's office and a message sent to us last week, only if we do not serve alcoholic beverages. So sodas, water, Red Bull, other things that don't have alcohol in it, great. We could serve alcohol if we had the ability to serve food on the premises. And, the last time we were open for a week, we were obviously, I think, probably in a much worse position as a state. Like it was like mid-May or something like that.
Late June.
Late June. Okay. Yeah. And that was like right when cases started spiking again. So, again, where this genesis of this question came is that the Denver Post pays us for access to that for co-working for the reporters to work downtown if they need to. Most of them, like most of us, are working from home, but for some folks, it's a little more convenient to be able to be there. And so when I asked the city attorney's office, well, can we open for them and allow journalists to work from out of there? Yep. So long as you don't serve booze, like if you're effectively using the space as an office space, you're totally fine while paying attention to social distancing, mask wearing, et cetera, et cetera. So,
and have reduced capacity, is that right?
Yeah, same thing. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Same thing, 23 people max. So, yep.
Does Leanne want to send reporters down there if we open?
She's got a couple that I think just sort of live far away, and when they're out like reporting stuff, she kind of likes the idea of having a central location. She's paid 4.5 months of, co-working rent that, we're effectively crediting her because like we've been closed since, mid-March. So, it's a way to sort of get back into that. If we were to say like, we're going to open up again, I have not sent a membership survey to ask because I honestly just wanted to get the feeling of the board first before I blasted something out to the membership and said, what's your opinion about opening up again? Would you agree with this?
It's going to require work on our part, right? Jim, we're not paying Jim to be there 40 hours a week, and someone's going to have to be there.
That's my issue with it is we're going to have somebody there whenever it's open for co-working. And so in that case, it becomes a financial question in my mind.
Is it a money loser for us, given that we can't serve alcohol and do other normal club activities?
Again, back of the napkin math, good question, Larry. I would guess just because our margins on alcoholic beverages are going to be so much higher than, a $2 for a soda.
It's the same kind of money loser. Not accounting for labor, which of course makes it a big money loser. But it's the same money loser as not being open. I mean, the margins on soda are zero.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, again, you sort of sit back and, there might be a world where like, we could, it's not a huge pain for me to work out of there occasionally, but yeah, I mean, just not having somebody full-time and again, paying Jim, what would that end up being? $400 a week times 40. $1,600 a month. Like you've seen the account balances. I don't think given what we are doing right now, that's a prudent financial decision.
Well, I have a question that I would just throwing it out there. I don't actually think it's the right course of action, but many places in our exact circumstances are open and operating under the guise of having food, but they don't actually serve food. Nobody comes in and orders the food that is served. And this is every tavern in town has this, including High Dive, which doesn't have a kitchen. They're getting food from Sputnik. Nobody has come into High Dive to order the Sputnik food. Nobody has gone into St. Paul Tavern and ordered from their tavern menu because they don't have a kitchen. If you wanted to explore opening and serving alcohol, that is what every tavern is doing in the state right now, and that would be a different equation. It's just having the food options available. they legitimately have to be available and they have to be quasi-legitimate, but there's not in city charter, you have to hit X% of sales not related to alcohol. That's point number one, and I don't have any opinion on that. Number two, I live downtown. If it got to the point where we're losing a lot of revenue from the Post and others, I don't mind going in 1 or 2 days a week to work there, and I think a few of us probably could, but I don't know how much revenue we're talking about.
Well, the thing is, they've already paid us the money. We've already got the money, right, Dan?
You do. Yep.
So we owe them whatever time we end up being closed, we owe them a commensurate amount of time that they'll be not paying us to co-work with us. My question is, do we push this off in the hope that when we can get this going again, that somebody else might come in and also pay for co-working, so we'd have at least some revenue coming in while we're doing this? I mean, you know, I know most of us probably aren't in any position to spend any time at the club during the week during business hours. So I just worry about us spending a bunch of money. I mean, I get on the one hand, the Post is paid for it, but I also think it's reasonable that we, you know, I've told them we'll credit them for whatever time they're due. But I'm not sure it makes sense to reopen for one client right now.
No, Skylar, let me make sure I understand. Are you saying that your interpretation of the rules is that if, say, bar, I don't even know, I mean, you know, ask what's actually open right now and serving food. If Bar Red is open, like, and we have that menu available and people could order from there, that like we'd be checking the boxes.
That's what many other taverns are doing. And my understanding is that we're being regulated under that tavern part of the.
We are.
Yeah. That's so the booze only joints, that's what they're doing. Now, it's not, this is why I'm hesitant on it. I'm not strictly certain it's legal, but I do know Denver code enforcement is not treating it as if it is illegal. So.
Yeah, I would just hate for us to be in a position where somebody does a story about people finding loopholes to get around the rules,
Yeah.
and we're part of the story.
Oh, who would
Right.
do that?
Place.
Not that anybody would do that.
Goes straight to our efforts to rebuild trust in the news media, of course. You know.
I'm even suggesting, based off what I've seen elsewhere, and this again might be a loophole, in which case I'm not supporting this, but if it is allowed under the letter of the code, we could do what we used to do, which is have those little pizzas that, you know, rarely anybody would order, or pretzels, and that may fulfill the city requirements. That it's worth looking into if we were to pursue reopening. It's not required, again, that we have a full kitchen or dinner service. It's not required we hit any number of sales related to non-alcohol. It's just required that food is served.
Well,
I believe.
Yeah.
In the business licensing center for the city of Denver, the requirement reads, must have available a minimum of sandwiches and light snacks to patrons during all hours when sale of alcohol is provided. However, tavern licensees may serve as much of a meal as they desire. That's the requirement.
So does that mean pretzels count?
Pretzels count. Like way back in the day before they redid the Kentucky Inn. The Kentucky Inn was famous for, they just had a rack of Lay's potato chips, and that was the food service there.
What about Holly's crock pot hot dogs? That wouldn't cost a lot of money. We go to Goodwill and buy a hot crock pot, clean that sucker out.
Tom's not here to say no.
Yeah.
What happens when somebody gets ptomaine poisoning from our crock pot hot dogs?
They won't.
I mean, I think okay, so let me see if I can distill this. It does not make sense to open up for just one client that's only going to be occasionally using it. However, we would appear to be in compliance if we could offer some snacks to people. And it would seem that if, you know, once Jim is able to work again, and we're in a position that, and we were to ask our membership, would you be comfortable coming down and actually working there, you know, observing all the social distancing, masks, et cetera. You know, if we had enough of people who'd say, like, you know, again, a simple question, like, yes, I could see myself, you know, how many times a month would you see coming down if we were to open again? You know, 0, you know, 1 to 4, 5 to 10, 11 plus times a month. You know, and then if we see like, okay, there might be some actual membership demand, you know, if there's enough there, then I could see I could see reopening. But not if
This
it's
is
just
Laura. Are
reopening.
we
Too, but I
talking
would
about?
want,
Go ahead, Laura.
go ahead, Laura.
Oh, thanks. Are we talking about reopening just during, 9 to 5 work hours, but not in the evening, or reopening in the evening? I guess the question that's percolating for me is, even if we opened with alcohol and food, would we break even?
Right.
Well, fair question. I mean, typically these things, we make our money by being able to actually rent the space out. I mean, I guess if I so probably not without, some capacity or close to that. But, I guess, and Jim, maybe you can look at this while you're looking at that, or I can just email the city attorney's office. There's plenty of things there's plenty of businesses that are hosting gatherings. And if you could, it would seem to me that you would be able to potentially open again under the existing city charter to say, do the downtown Democratic Forum and, but say limit it to the 20 people. I don't know if they even would. Who knows? I mean, the other thing is we could be playing with fire here.
Right.
And we don't want to get into that. The other thing is we could just open it and watch it for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, see what happens. And if it's losing money, shut it down again.
Remember, we're going to have some disruption in September, October, and November for the construction.
Where we will have to be closed during the daytime hours, Jim?
Probably, yeah.
So it almost seems like it makes sense to wait until we're through that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if the incidence of the virus gets low enough in Colorado, I would hate to keep the club closed, the bar closed, if there's demand from the membership. Because, I mean, we exist for several reasons. That's one of them. And we need the revenue.
What about a 1 or 2 night a week opening to see how it goes, or Thursday nights?
Just to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See what happens. Look and see what your liquor sales are and how much you had to pay Jim, and think, well, if we could keep whatever, if nobody shows up, then we maybe have our answer. But if a bunch of people show up, we can kind of see what the books look like at the end of the night.
That seems like a soft way to get into it, do just 1 night a week or 2 nights a week and just see what happens. Obviously let people know. I think it would still be worth actually asking the membership, but
It is. I think that should happen ASAP.
yeah.
Yeah.
Laura,
And whatever, it's marketing we could do.
If we were just doing 1 or 2 nights a week.
Free social.
Sorry, Laura.
Go ahead, Megan.
I was just going to say, if we were only doing 1 or 2 nights a week, I wonder if there'd be a way to get a food truck there 1 or 2 nights a week. Because that's something you could promote, right?
Yeah, the challenge is that they will, I don't know. I mean, generally speaking, they don't show up unless, there's some sort of critical mass. And I don't know if 23 people represents critical mass for them. Of course, they might also be in a position that they appreciate any revenue that's coming in. I don't know.
I think the place to start would be if you've already have it on writing somewhere that the city attorney's office says if we serve food, we could reopen under guidelines with our liquor license to clarify what food service is under their interpretation, just because of the risk is higher for us as a relatively esteemed institution for this gray area, and it's much higher risk for us than any other establishment. But if it does sound like we could get away with very, very light food service and opening, I would suggest the next step would be polling the members, and then exactly as Megan and others have asked, Thursdays and Fridays, just to see if anybody comes in. But I wouldn't do anything until we have some sort of sense that we're not going to be a bad actor.
Let me see if I can pull open what they exactly said.
Yeah, that was my question. Can we get in writing what they consider appropriate food service? If it's like Jim said, at a minimum, sandwiches and light snacks. I mean, we get some microwavable sandwiches and some light snacks that we have available for people.
that likely nobody would ever order.
Like you could get a box of Uncrustables at the Costco and put that in the freezer and call those your sandwiches, knowing no one's going to buy that. You've spent $6.
Kevin,
If we're going to try to find a technical loophole here.
I think the frozen pizzas are legitimate.
that's totally legitimate.
And there's a good faith argument that they are too, because we've sold them before.
I also
The
love
question is,
pretzels.
do they count as a sandwich?
Let me share my screen so everybody can just see
Hold it
the
over.
response.
To Skylar's point, I think regardless, it makes sense to clarify with the committee just to make it clear we're on the up and up.
Did I end up sharing my audio by mistake?
But you had that letter up and then it went away.
Give me a second.
Bars that offer food from a licensed retail food establishment for on-premise consumption. I believe we're also licensed as a food establishment, but we could offer Bar Red's food. I mean, and then we'd have to dive into all of these PHOs. And I don't know if that order was renewed and to what degree. But that explains how other bars are getting away with this. They're offering food from licensed retail establishments.
So it would seem if we had frozen pizzas on hand that we would be good.
I believe we're regulated. That's why they inspect our kitchen, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So just have some frozen pizzas in the, freezer and,
And publicly display the menu in a more prominent way than we do currently.
Okay. Well, okay. So I think we're probably safe there, but first things first is to, wait for Jim to get well. And in the meantime, I will poll the members and we'll see whether, because again, if two people say they're coming down, then, well, that's our answer. No. So good. Any other thoughts or questions from the group?
Do you need to communicate something to the Post? Because I think even if we were open for evening service 2 days a week, that wouldn't necessarily fulfill.
Let me just talk to Leanne or
Okay.
or I don't know, Noelle, do you have any bandwidth to talk to her? Okay.
Yeah, I can ask her.
Just I think she's interested in Conrad. They like having access in particular, but you may have other reporters that might need it. So
Okay. Yeah, she asked me about people using it, and I said that we'd had you on ready to go down there and open it up when the early protest days were happening, but we ended up not using it because we couldn't physically get across the tear gas to get there. So yeah.
yeah, just see what she has in mind. If you don't mind, just let me know. Text
All
her.
right.
Or thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks for the good discussion, everybody. I appreciate it. In terms of manager stuff, I don't have anything else beyond what we've talked about. So let's go back to our agenda. Treasurer's report. I will just show, hold on. I will show you what our bank balances are. Just give me a moment. All right, this is, let me sum this up. These are our bank balances. What the heck? I know what I'm doing. All right. These are our bank balances at the moment. This is where we were a year ago. This is where we are as of this evening. This is the variance year over year and the percentage of that variance. So we've got all told $292,013. if you want to actually look at, unrestricted cash, you're looking at roughly, let's see here. Why am I bad at this? You're looking at roughly $58,656 of unrestricted cash. This restricted savings, again, is from Walter's gift. This is obviously accounted for in the State Historical Fund. This is the same thing. This is the match, all accounted for in that. The scholarship stuff we can't touch. So, actual liquid funds or reasonably liquid funds is about $59,000. On the PBA side, you can see, it's the same story as it's always been, which is that, we effectively have no PBA revenue coming in. There's no rentals, there's no bars. The checking stuff for DPC and the savings is largely membership revenue. As I've said before, I don't see that changing. I will tell you that we are starting to get an uptick in people who are saying, their renewals are coming up and they're saying, I paid for this with my company. Our company's scaling back. These are like the high value ones, like the $275 memberships, people scaling back. Journalists obviously have their own challenges, of course, as well. Keep in mind, as I emailed you before, and we'll actually just formally vote on this in the DPC meeting, but I've got another 16,000-ish coming out of for the gift baskets boxes that we're doing, and then another 7,000 or so for audio visual. And then of course, there's just ongoing expenses. So we're getting tight, is what I would say. So, a couple things that we can do with this right now. The biggest thing in the short term is getting more people to sign up for our virtual Runyon. That is really important. And then the second thing I would say is membership. Again, I don't, the house is not on fire right now, but we do, we're not, I think at this point we thought that maybe there was going to be potentially some more government relief, and it has not come through. I don't know that it's going to come through. So, again, this isn't a 5-alarm fire, but it's concerning. And it's something that, after I've, really stepped back, you guys are going to have to take a hard look at this and figure out what needs to be done here. We've got some ideas that Kevin and I are going to talk about in the next meeting, but just FYI, this is where we stand. Questions?
Why is the ensign scholarship balance so low?
Because we largely fundraise for that through the Runyon ticket sales, and we have already paid out the $15,000 that those kids gotten for this year. So that's sort of where we stand now without having sold any of Runyon 2021. Obviously taking any donations from the Runyon as well. So that's why.
Okay.
All right. Let's go back to our stuff. Hold on. New business. Anybody have new business for the PBA?
I had some communication today with Eric Beeson from Ireland, and the rest of that crew. You want me to talk about that now or in the other meeting?
Let's save it for DPC.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else? All right. Motion to adjourn. Looking for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Moved.
Skylar first, second.
Second.
Second, Larry. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
All right. Motion carries unanimously. Megan, are you good? You can just nod your head, yes or no. Okay, you're good. All right. It's 6:34 p.m. Calling to order the Denver Press Club Board of Directors meeting. So I'm going to gavel in. Questions about the minutes?
I move we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed, abstained? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. All right. Next, new members. And so I've got a couple we've got to approve, 4 actually. So I'll just share. That's a nice thing about sharing this. We've got Eugenia Bloom, who is with, wait for it. I looked her up, something related to development and nonprofit housing. And she signed up. I don't quite know. Does anybody know Eugenia?
Nope.
Okay. And then we've got Tom Fouch for the non-resident rate of One Riverside Golf Club. Anybody know him?
He's bad.
Good.
We really
That's
want a
really nice of
Nebraskan
him.
in the club.
I think he's the only one representing the state. So that's good. No, I saw that come through, and I messaged him. I said I thanked him. So Carla Hendrickson, she is a retired school teacher. I spoke to her on the phone in Pueblo, really into our Damon Runyon Award dinner and banquet, has attended for several years. They had hoped to actually do like a Damon Runyon Days down in Pueblo, since he is originally from there. For lots of reasons, they've canceled that, but she wanted to become a member, and she's going to attend the virtual Runyon this year. So she is the non-resident rate because she lives in Pueblo. And then last is Julian Martinez, who is a student at Metro studying journalism, if this thing ever would open up. And so those are all of our folks that we have. Questions about him?
I think for the sake of the bylaws, do we have to, one of us has to say we do know Eugenia Bloom, right? I'm happy to say I do. I don't, but I mean, do we still have a sponsorship requirement? I'm actually asking this separate. I just can't remember what we're required to do.
I need to check on that, honestly, Skylar. I don't know if that's a requirement. We can certainly table her until next time.
I hope not.
Well, one of the things that I did, we did do.
When I joined a million years ago, you had to have the signatures of 3 members to turn in your application.
I know I had to have 2 people vouch for me, and I just don't remember changing that. But I also don't want to create an issue. I'm mostly clarifying just, because there will be a leadership transition later and things we might have to change down the line.
Well, it is apparently up to our discretion if I'm reading this first. It shall be prescribed in the manner by the board of directors. All applicants shall be presented to the board of directors for consideration.
Great. Perfect. Then wonderful. Then I vote yes on all 3.
Yeah, wow, we have really dropped the requirements. Yeah. Reminder that if you're ever curious about our bylaws, they're just under about bylaws. So, okay. So all 4 for, you're putting all 4 forward, Skylar. Is that a motion?
Yeah, I guess I'm moving that.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Second, Jim Clark. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? All right. The motion carries unanimously. Okay. Let me switch back over to my other agenda. Okay. Public comment. There's nobody from the public on here, so we will move along. And I got my timing wrong. Whoops. That's why that didn't add up right. Damon Runyon Award. As I mentioned before, we need to make a last push to sell tickets. I'm going to drop the link to Black Tie Colorado in here where people can buy tickets. If you know somebody who hasn't, bought yet, if you can post to your Facebook page, share it on Twitter. I will probably send a note over to Corey Hutchins and ask him to include it in his newsletter too, which I think hopefully should help. So anything that you can do to showcase this, get more orders. We've probably had about a dozen since we reopened it. All that really helps. It's close to pure profit for us, and it really helps us out. The gift box distribution, we have set up, they're being ordered, they're being put together, filled with Colorado snacks and goodies, a highball glass, a bandana that has like the First Amendment on it, and lots of other surprises. It's really, really cool. Jen Forker did a really, really good job on it. And Jim Clark is, along with Linda Shapley, are going to be setting up shop on Monday and Tuesday. Monday, September 6th, whatever that Labor Day is, if I'm getting that number right.
The 7th.
The 7th, sorry. And then the 8th, from basically noon to 5 for people to drop by and just pick up their gift boxes. More people pick up, the better. That means we save on postage. Jen would like to support the U.S. Postal Service by sending these things through the U.S. Postal Service. And so what's nice is that saves a little money. I'm hopeful that they are able to deliver it on time too. But you know, if it comes a bit close to the deadline, okay. So again, what we're encouraging people to do is to pick up these things. In terms of lost sponsorship at this point, the University of Denver officially pulled out totally. They're the only college to pull back. They are coming back in with 2 ticket purchases. I've only seen 1 come through. Everybody else is sticking in. We did have 1 individual table that pulled back. So we've thankfully, and thanks to all of you as well, held on to our sponsors for the most part. 2 cancellation, I should say 3, the 2.5, I'll call it 2.5 because we had 1 that said they wanted a small refund, but that was it. So all in all, like we did lose some, but not as much as I feared. So that's good. Again, we're just in the middle of just finalizing that gift box distribution. We've also brought on an executive producer, thanks to Megan Yergemeyer's help. Thank you, Megan. Megan Doyle is her name. She is really sharp. She's going to help us, make sure that we put on a great production. And officially signed the sheet with Production Services International. And so we have them ready to go. We're going to be meeting with them this week. And just kind of walking through the script. Megan is going to be helping write Mike Nelson's lines. Mike Nelson is going to be emceeing for us. And we've got a lot of the details coming together. The programs have been printed, or are being printed, sorry. They've been designed. They will be going into the gift boxes. And yeah, all in all, it should be good. We're going to do a dress rehearsal the day of around noon on Saturday. And then the actual show from 5:30 to 6-ish with the VIP Q&A, and then some table talk stuff with our tables, and then we'll start the formal program at 6:30 and be done right around 8. We're also waiting on the final touches for the student scholarship videos. Casey Nicolark and the 1010 group did a really fantastic job, great production and production value. And so it should be really special as well. I think that is everything.
Can I ask a silly question?
Mm-hmm.
So normally we would distribute our tickets and it would go a ticket to each attendee, and then often somebody would bring a date, so that person would need a ticket too. In this case, because you're attending virtually over Zoom, can we give all 10 of our tickets to employees, and if they have a significant other at home, they can listen in?
Yeah, I mean, there's no way we can possibly police that.
I don't want to skirt the rules or cheat anybody, but I'm like,
I would say if you wanted
hey,
to
Kevin,
tell
your
people
wife
that,
has to go sit in the other room. She can't.
I would say this. I would say certainly there's nothing stopping anyone from doing that. By way of example, my wife purchased a ticket as well. Although I guess technically we're going to be in separate places for this. So I would just say if people have the ability to and can afford it, we would certainly appreciate it. But again, not going to rain on anybody's parade. But anything they can do. I mean, if they don't want to do that and they want to donate later, that's cool. If they can't, that's fine. Just nothing stopping it. Recognize this is a totally different event, and that's fine.
Hey,
Yeah.
Dan,
Mm-hmm.
what's the deadline by which somebody needs to buy a ticket to get the goodie box?
As long as it's probably probably that Tuesday, but Yeah, it would be like that Tuesday the 7th. Am I getting that, or 8th? That's what I'm
8th.
saying. Yeah, we could not go beyond that. Basically, like after that, this is the other thing too. We have like extra gift boxes, so we know we do. So we can guarantee them if they order tickets that they're going to get a gift box, even though we've ordered them already.
So I'm just thinking about a social media post. If we guarantee they purchase by 9-8, they not only get the ticket, but they get the goodie box in time for the event.
I would say in the interest of just forcing the hand, like I'd just say like September 1st. Like that'll make life way easier. Guarantee they'll get a gift box.
All right.
Yeah.
You have 300 glasses.
Photo? Do you
They're
have
all in my
a photo?
garage.
A photo of the gift box?
Yeah, for social. That would
We're
be
getting
helpful.
one.
Okay, great.
We have a photo of Jim Clark posing in front of the club, where people will meet him to pick up the gift boxes, which is a pretty funny photo, if I do say so myself.
Anything, if any photo would be helpful.
Okay.
I think Jen said yesterday she was working on a photo, right, Dan?
Oh yeah, you're right. I'll message her and see where she is on that. Or hey, Jim, if she's around the corner.
Okay, I'll yell down.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate all your support, folks. Other questions? Big credit to Jen Forker, Bruce Goldberg, Linda Shapley, Laura Frank, Megan Doyle, and I think that's everybody, or I'm a terrible person, for all their work organizing all this stuff. It's a lot, and it's been a heck of a pivot to do it, but I'm confident, we're all basically pros at Zoom at this point, so how bad could it possibly get?
Right.
I echo that, and I just wanted to share that today I was talking to one of the organizers of the Emmys, the regional Emmy Awards, which usually have 500 people in a hotel ballroom, had 1,600 people watching online. So
wow. Yeah,
there's potential. We'll keep going.
Yeah, there totally is. We are, and just as a reminder, we are putting the, we're going to do our best with the Zoom and collecting email addresses we've done. But at the end of the day, like we will have a live page where people can go and, watch it on YouTube if they don't want to do Zoom. So that's really good. Jim Hill, that was the other thing I was going to ask you about, but I can ask you it after this meeting. I need somebody to help. I know during the run up to be like technical support. And I mean the people who like frantically email and say like, I can't get in, I forgot the password. All this stuff is on the program, by the way. It's all going to be emailed. So, but you tell people 100 times and like still something's going to come up. So
I
if
can help with
anybody
that
would
too,
like,
Dan.
okay.
Yeah, I can help with that as well. Not alone, but if there's somebody else who's also able to do it, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can help. I am of infinite patience. I can handle that.
I figure you two have, gone through this rodeo before. So, I think too, I think what we're probably going to do is just have an email address there for folks. WBUR had actually set up a Google Voice number that people could call if they were not comfortable with that, and then it would just ring phones and people would answer. But I think just sort of like we give you access to a DPC email address, and people can email if they have questions and they don't know. So thank you. Okay, any other questions about Runyon?
No, I mean, I'm blown away by all the work you guys have done to make this happen. I think it's going to be the next best thing to what we really would like to have.
Yes. Go ahead, Jim.
Jen says she'll get photos of some sort. She doesn't have the gift boxes yet, but we've got the glasses, we've got the recipe card. She'll come up with something for promotion.
Perfect. Yeah. Jen's got a good eye, so.
She's got good taste in husbands too.
I knew that was coming. The second I said that, I knew that was coming. So.
Yeah, no, it's really a credit to the committee for all the work that they've done. And we're going to do the best we can. As I said before, we have not met to kind of want to get through this. I am really optimistic in our ability to raise money during this. We've already set up the text line, text DPC to 91999. I've got to look at it. And it just sends you a link and you can kind of donate right from your phone. It's really slick. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some good stuff from that as well. There's also the online donation form too. All that's going to help. We're going to pepper it throughout, particularly after the student journal speeches, since, we're going to be touting the fact that thanks to this board's generosity, we donated a record amount this year in student journalism scholarships. So all really good stuff. And again, what I would say is that we're probably looking at doing 2021 sometime in the fall, in every effort to try to make it happen in person. Not that I don't think there isn't a chance that you could attempt to do it in the spring and you might be able to get people, but I'm not really holding my breath for that. I think fall potentially gives you the best chance as well. Speaking of that, I did want to sort of open up discussion about the Hall of Fame, since we technically have a reservation for January 8th at the Denver Athletic Club. And I figure we could talk about that now. That strikes me as an event that, we're talking about something that either breaks even or maybe at most makes $4,000 to $5,000. My feeling is that we actually just don't host a Hall of Fame in 2020 at all. But
I would agree with that, but with the caveat that I think there is some prestige to that in the journalism community, winning and and getting inducted and that sort of thing. So I would say that it's something that if we put a pause on it for this year, that's fine, but it should probably continue in some form.
Of course.
Just because, yeah, okay, great.
Yeah.
I have actually kicked around in my head the question of whether we should have a class this year, but plan for the ceremony to be rolled together with the following year's ceremony. And then I thought about how long the speeches would last, and I was like,
as long as you limit people to 5 minutes and cut their microphones.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Should we reinduct Sam Adams?
We are.
I wasn't sure the 2019 speeches were over yet.
Yeah. Sam's a good friend, and to his credit, I saw him in your office a week later, Megan, and I said, "What are you doing in here?" He said, "I'm still wrapping up my speech."
I never heard that story.
Oh yeah, I love Sam. He knew. He's like,
great.
hey, he's like, it's my one time. I'm gonna take my time, and I'm like, you do you, Sam.
Sam is a good. I have to thank Sam. It's a big reason that we have a professional executive producer running the show on September 12th.
In all seriousness, I think we just skip the Hall of Fame this year and put a footnote in the records or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's just, and I don't even think we're going to be ready for these sorts of things in January either.
No.
No, I don't think we are.
Definitely not.
The question I have is whether. Yeah, the question I have is whether I think it makes sense to sort of have in our minds that we'll do the Runyon next fall. That's got to be the bigger event. That's obviously the one that brings in much more revenue. And then the question is, how do we get back on track with the Hall of Fame at a time when it makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, could you look at something like August and then you attempt to do something like in December between Thanksgiving and,
No, don't do that. The cadence is right. You would want a spring and early fall. It's just they're going to be a little out of whack. You can just flip them. But don't put anything in December. Budgets are spent, people aren't in town.
And I don't know the genesis, maybe Roger knows, but I don't know how the genesis of how the Runyon came to be a spring event, because the first Runyon was in October. So it started originally as a fall event, and it would be easy enough to make it a fall event. I suspect moving it to the spring was trying to move it away from elections and other things that news people might be tied up with. But I don't think there's anything etched in stone that says we can't do it in the fall in the future. on a regular basis.
I think it's important to do it in person too. Like, I don't want to cheat people out of like that experience. Purposely set it up to do that. So, I mean, again, things go really well in the winter and spring, and could you potentially pull off a Hall of Fame in 2021, like June, and then have your Runyon in September or October? Like, yeah, I could see that, but not in January.
Say, I also would say, just for planning purposes, if we can pull off the Runyon next year, that'll be incredible, because so much is different, right? I don't think we should need to, backbreak ourselves. If it doesn't happen next year for a Hall of Fame, it's 1 year. It's a gimme. People will understand.
Well, you'd be looking at 2 years at that point. You'd have no 2020 class and you'd have no 2021 class. You'd next be, which may be the reality.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing I just want everybody to keep in mind is, even once this is over, even once there's a vaccine, there's going to be a lot of timidity from folks to go to any sort of event. So, that's why 2021 being, questionable from my perspective is realistic for a couple of reasons. Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, Scarlett. Go ahead.
Well, companies aren't going to rush to buy tables for things if they aren't sure that it's safe, and we're not going to know it's safe until, we have some sort of penetration rate on a vaccine. And then also individuals might not either. So I think having one big press club event for 2020, 2021, and it being the Runyon makes more sense than trying to do two. I think you're going to have a hard time, once we can do in person, getting people to rush in. I might be dead wrong, but that's just what I'm guessing.
Do we want to vote formally to, cancel the Hall of Fame for 2020? I feel like we have not taken a formal vote on that ever.
I don't think it exists as something we're required to, because there's no disbursement of any. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it requires a formal.
Okay. I think the bylaws are kind of silent on that.
You can just log it in the minutes for posterity that didn't have one, even though there are many deserving journalists in the community.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I get the right words in there. But yes, I put a note in. We will make sure next time around we give it all of the attention it deserves.
Great. All right. I think that is, I think we've been talking about the Runyon the whole time, which is of course important. Let me go now to my president's report. So Jim, as I mentioned to all of you, accepted the interim general manager's position. And so we're really grateful to him for that. He, had taken pretty quickly to handling things, looking at stuff. When he found something that I needed to deal with, sending it to me. So I've really appreciated Jim's work for all of that stuff. I did want to transition next to sort of where we are with what I'll call the executive director search / fundraising manager proposal. And I think for that, Kevin Vaughn, I will turn this over to you.
All right, give me 15 seconds here. I have to look at a 10 o'clock story right now. Okay, looks good.
Just what Megan wants to hear.
That's how you do script approval? Oh.
Sorry, I'm helping Aaron today.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you got that. Anyway.
Oh, it's great. It's great. Anyway. So after talking a couple weeks ago with Dan, I reached out to Rob Reutemann, who was the business editor and city editor at the Rocky and a professor at CSU, and someone I just had a lot of respect for, and just sort of picked his brain a little bit about people that might be able to help us think about how we plot a path forward. And he suggested that we get together with a guy named Albie Siegel, who was a friend of his, former head of the Jewish Family Services here, former head of the Children's Museum, I think spent 4 or 5 years as head of the Emily Griffith Foundation, is semi-retired, but is always looking for interesting things to do. And so Dan and I met him last Monday night and sort of kicked around a variety of ideas with him, and sort of thinking about this idea that we might sort of redefine what our top paid position in the club is, as someone whose main responsibility falls into the areas of building membership, raising money, and less toward the sort of day-to-day operation of the building and that sort of thing. And that we might actually use kind of what we're doing now as a stopgap as a business practice going forward, where we would have a bartender that we would expect and entrust with things like, getting the alcohol ordered and making sure the light bill gets paid and stuff, and the other person would have responsibility to make sure that stuff is happening, but they wouldn't actually be the person having to do that work. And so we met with Albie for a couple of hours, and he has forwarded a proposal to us in which he's interested in coming on board initially with just a 3-month contract that would, for lack of a better term, he would essentially assess what we need to do to raise money, assess what sort of messaging we need, assess what sort of interest there is out there among the philanthropy community to give us money and that sort of stuff. And by the end of the year, either have identified somebody that he would recommend that we bring on board to do that. I think Dan's just shared the proposal with us. Or I think the door is open that it might be something that he'd be willing to take on, at least in part. He doesn't want to work full time. So I don't know how realistic it is that he would take this on as a longer term project of a couple of years or whatever. But after we got his proposal last week, I think Dan and I talked about it and thought that the next logical step was to share this with the board and take all of your input on whether this is something we ought to consider going forward with. Albie's proposed that we'd pay him $3,000 a month for the next 3 months to do this, which is significantly less than we would pay a new general manager probably if we hired somebody right now to start. But it's got me thinking about a lot of things, and I think it's gotten Dan thinking about some things. And so I think we're interested to hear what you guys have to say. And Dan, I mean, fill in whatever blanks I've left.
Well, I actually would like to turn it over to Roger. Roger, are you with us? Because I know you and Albie go back quite a bit. I wonder if you might be able to share anything about Albie with the board.
Yeah, Albie and I go back to his children's museum days when I was at Channel 4, and really helped him build that facility and put in displays where we had a news set and a weather set, and had a long relationship with him. And I've remained friends with him over the years. He called me after meeting with the two of you, and we had a fairly lengthy conversation about where he is in life, what he wants to do, what he saw as the opportunity. And I encouraged him to take the conversation further and really explore whether some sort of a short-term hybrid thing would work. We're at a unique position in time where we don't have to have a full-time manager in there running it night to night when we are fully open. So I think that actually represents an opportunity. What I know about Albie as an individual is anything he takes on is very likely to be successful. He's a very intelligent guy. He's a hardworking guy, very intuitive, tells you exactly what's on his mind. He's not bashful at all. But knowing his background and knowing where we are, I encourage us to pursue this. And I gave him a pretty good speech about his role going forward in regard to an institution that has a unique opportunity in the world of journalism right now. and his becoming a part of that seemed to appeal to him. Gave him some of the history of the press club from my 6-year involvement now. And so the bottom line was, at the end of the conversation, I think he was engaged in doing something. I think we probably should ask for more than 3 months, because I think in addition to putting together a game plan on what we might do and what the opportunity is, I think we should include some language with regard to his executing on whatever his game plan is for at least a couple of months once that's done. But I encourage us to do this. This is a quality guy. Just sold off his mother's apartment in a highly desirable place in New York. And so financially, he repeated to me several times that it's not about money. It's just about something he wants to do and feel like he's making a contribution to. So I think maybe we've had a crossing of opportunities here that might serve us well.
Roger, it's interesting that you said that I was just going to say, it's interesting that you said that he says what's on his mind, because when we first sat down with him and we're sort of starting to talk to him about the press club, the first question he asked is, all right, so tell me, why should the press club exist? Why should it survive? Why should anybody give it money? I mean, and just sort of put Dan and I on the spot right away to try to verbalize what it is we all feel about the importance of the building. And I thought it was, I mean, I sort of felt that same way. Like, this is a guy that asks you exactly what he's thinking, tells you exactly what he's thinking, and I really respect that. Go ahead, Laura.
I was just going to say, this is really interesting to me, and I just quickly Googled Albee and see that the Vail Symposium at some point, I'm not finding, I guess in 2010, created a part-time position for him to be president and CEO with an executive director, kind of running day to day. So he's done this sort of even part-time work created for him in a nonprofit before.
Laura, he actually, during that period, had 2 jobs. He had the Vail job, and he had another job in New York City, and went back and forth about every 4 weeks between the 2 jobs. So he was combining 2 of them. So he was actually working, quite hard. I think the other thing is,
yes, I see.
Yeah, I think the other thing is he really is wired into this community. I mean, there aren't too many people, particularly on the foundation fundraising side, that he doesn't know, which for me was another big plus. We chatted about Linda Childers over at the Daniels Foundation. He knows her better than I do. We talked about Anschutz, who I consulted with for 4 years, and his foundation. So I think we hit the ground running if we all agree on what the task is and how it works.
Let me just read this to you. National Leadership Development Officer at National Jewish Health, Major Gifts Officer at Allied Jewish Federation, board member of the Colorado Symphony, Anti-Defamation League, and Museum of Contemporary Art. Those, he absolutely knows how to do what we want someone to do, and has, like you were just pointing out, great connection. This is fascinating to me.
When I mentioned, kind of our goal would be, again, without really having much background and whether it was reasonable, that we wanted to raise a $5 million endowment, to Kevin and Roger's point, he'll tell you what you think. And right away it was like, yep, you and a lot of other charities want to raise a $5 million endowment, get in line. And I appreciated it. It was just, what's a more reasonable goal, and, what's maybe an intermediate step to something like that. And he, talks about this in this proposal that, for those of you who haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'll just sort of sum it up. Working effectively with Jim to take on some management functions day to day. I think we've already done, that. And I think Jim has shown, again, an ability to do that. It's been good to work with him so far. So, he's talking about, again, doing a full assessment of the current readiness. What are our current fundraising activities? What would it take to, actually initiate an endowment program and then test the waters, create a development plan, both long and short term, more collaborative with the manager and the board and people on the board, which I think, again, is going to be really important. And then actually talk with potential funders to test the waters. What would they be interested in doing? What, could it be, we talked about, would it be possible to find a funder who might support, say, I don't know, two journalism internships or something like that for, candidates of color, or, some underserved journalism, journalists or young journalists getting started out, something like that. All that stuff I think sounded like was on the table. And he talks about too in here about identifying a fundraiser who's capable of management duties and actually interested in the full-time job. So what I'm hearing from Roger is that 3 months maybe isn't enough. And so Roger, it sounds like you would be more in favor of something along the lines of 6 months or 4 months.
Yeah, and I actually mentioned that to him. I said 3 months I think is enough for you to write a paper, but 3 months is not enough for you to start to prove out the recommendations you're making. And I think it would be important to us to have you do that at least for some reasonable period of time. So I would go back and ask him for a 6 month commitment, I think.
I'd also like to, I would say if we were going to go forward with this, I'd also like to talk to him a little bit more and maybe even have this as part of the agreement as to whether he envisions, trying to actually raise some money during this period of time. I know he talks about testing the water, but does he envision that might even lead to some donations early on? And I like your idea, Roger, of a longer commitment. I totally got the sense from him that he's looking for something that interests him. He'd like to make a little bit of money from it, but the money's not really important. And he doesn't want to work, 50 hours a week anymore. So seems like a really interesting fit. And so what do others think?
He seems like he's straight out of central casting for this. I mean, I couldn't come up with a better fit. It seems perfect. He's got, I respect Roger says a lot. I mean, I looking at his proposal, looking at his LinkedIn, I can't think of anybody who, as Roger said, just I think seems to be a great alignment. So I'd be comfortable with whatever you folks propose to do with future steps with him.
I'm not finding the proposal. Is that?
Oh, sorry, Laura. I dropped it in the Zoom chat. I'll forward it to you right now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
I'll just send it to the board.
I would also say this, as we're thinking about this, there's a segue here into the Ireland, Stapleton, Pryor, and Pasco discussion. I had some contact with Eric Benson today, who's the attorney over there that's primarily working on our management structure. He'd been trying, he had asked, and I'm not sure, I thought Tom was going to answer him, but maybe Tom thought I was going to answer him. He's trying to calculate what percentage of time our manager spends dealing with the press club versus the PBA. We have a much stronger argument to exist solely as a 501c3 if a majority of what the manager does has to do with the PBA. And so I told him today that we were considering something like this, in which case this person would be 85 or 90% of their time would really be devoted to the club, with a small management oversight of the things like ordering the liquor and that sort of thing. And so he responded and said that sort of arrangement would make it a much better argument to the IRS about this question of, can we simply dissolve the PBA and operate as a singular entity under our 501c3? So they sort of fit together. We are at a unique time. Having been closed, we've got the luxury of not, being scrambling to find somebody just to open the door every day for the customers. It seems like the veritable perfect storm to me.
Other thoughts from folks?
I think this is a no-brainer.
So
He did have one request of me. He and I have been playing Words with Friends for about 2 years, and the head-to-head is about 110-22, with me winning. And he wanted to know if I'd let up on him a little bit.
Jesus, Roger, roll over.
Take
on the
one
couch.
for the team, Roger.
Come on, man.
Are you willing to consider this, Roger?
I'm thinking about it, but it's a big ego hit.
He was telling us about the relationships that he has with folks at the Anschutz Foundation and everything. I mean, I think this is smart. I think it would be good to move ahead with something, see if he'd be amenable to a 6-month agreement.
I just have one request on that for the record. I think that if you were to do that, I think you guys absolutely should, but if you could come back to the board with the contract for us to vote on, I think that would just be good from a bylaws and a minutes perspective. But
so go ahead.
I think that makes sense. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, the Nuggets won. Okay. Sorry. I think that the motion is probably something along the lines of, charging Kevin and Dan to negotiate with Albie on a restructured contract, to structure the contract ideally for 6 months and to pull that together and, bring that back to the board specifically, unless we just sit and wait for us. I would like the motion to begin negotiations is what I'm asking.
Yeah. So I motion to authorize club leadership. Does that encompass everybody?
Perfect.
To encompass to enter into discussions with, I don't know if we're allowed to say his name in the proposed consulting agreement to, whatever it is, just work it out. We'll work it out later. But I want to move to authorize you guys to enter into discussions with this guy to determine next steps.
Megan, did you get all that?
Yeah, and I have his name in here. That's not a problem, is it?
I don't know. It could be. I mean, I don't know if he cares, but
he's writing the proposal under his consulting company name too. So I mean, this is. I think it's fine.
Okay.
Transparency.
Yes.
Hey, Dan, one other thing I should mention that I spent some time pitching him on with regard to the amount of time, where I thought 3 months was too little time and that 5 or 6 months made more sense. Told him that, as I said before, we're at a unique moment, I think, in journalism in this country, and we have a whole large group of young people coming up in the world of journalism with somewhat a different approach than perhaps we had 20 years ago. And I told him that his participation in that process was something that I was pretty sure would ultimately appeal to him, but he needed to be exposed to it for a longer period of time. And then I told him, I said, I think I predict that if you do that, you'll be around in some form, maybe as a board member or doing something else for a whole lot longer than 5, 6 months. So I said, basically, we're going to introduce you to the Lord's work here. And so that's another thing that in your conversations with him, you should be aware of.
Great.
Excellent.
Skylar has moved. I will second.
Second, Megan, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Let me just go back. I think the next thing on my list was, Kevin, anything else on Ireland, Stapleton, Pryor, and Pasco?
No, I think Eric's pretty close to being able to sit down with a group of us and talk through our options going forward. One thing that's become more clear to me, I think, than it was previously, is that the paper loss, or the money that the PBA owes the club, is going to be problematic almost no matter what we do.
That's interesting.
It's problematic if we just let it go and dissolve the PBA. It's problematic if we forgive it and write it off from the DPC.
As bad debt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this probably is going to turn out to be not as simple as I had hoped it would be. But I definitely get the feeling from Eric that they're back in a more normal work routine. And so, I mean, he's very much more responsive now than he was in the first 2 or 3 months of the pandemic, when weeks would go by before I would hear back from him. So he asked for a few days to meet with his partners and discuss the information I provided about how I thought we could break up the management in between the two organizations. And then I think early next week, I'm going to ask him, when we could get together on Zoom or whatever and discuss further, like what's the next step and what are the risks to the various options.
So if they go ahead with actually recommending that we dissolve the PBA and consolidate under the 501c3, it is possible that what they actually might say is you can dissolve the PBA once we've reallocated expenses and you have paid back that 1.1-ish million dollars in liability that's accrued over 20 years is what I
Yeah,
got
so
to say.
these are the 4 options that he's says we have. One is to maintain our current structure, but sort of basically redesign how we operate in a way so that the DPC is no longer propping up the PBA and that actually PBA money is supporting the DPC. That's a much more typical arrangement where you have a for-profit component that aids the nonprofit. The other would be to convert the DPC into some other kind of a 501c7 social club, but it would likely need IRS approval, and it likely would raise eyebrows if they looked at the numbers. Dissolving the PBA has the issue of red flags if we forgive the debt and red flags if we don't. And then I guess the last option was maintain the PBA and dissolve the DPC, but he said we're not really seriously considering this, as it would probably raise the most serious red flags with the IRS and would mean no donations were no longer tax deductible. So I think it's going to come down to keeping our current structure, but changing the PBA to something other than a for-profit corporation, or dissolving the PBA and figuring out what to do about that $1 million on, on paper that's owed. So I will ask him for a meeting next week. Who else should be in on that?
I can
Larry,
be
do you
there.
want to be involved in that?
Sure.
Since you kind of got the ball rolling, you were at our earlier meeting, right?
I was, yep. Happy to do it, depending on what day.
Yeah. Anybody else interested? I mean, obviously you, Dan.
If you're, Jim Clark, if you are available, I think it would be good to have you on as well.
Okay, well, I'm not traveling anywhere, so.
Me too.
And I'm happy to help if I can. This is Laura.
Okay.
Great. It's a good group. And if anybody else wants to join and wants to get their hands messy in mergers, acquisitions, and company restructuring, get ready to dive in.
Gone through that once this year already. I'm not doing that again.
I think this is going to be great for a great business case study. This will be something I can use in school or something. Okay. Anything else, Kevin?
No, I don't think so. Not on that.
All right. Next thing for the last bit of my president's report is just the transition. As I mentioned, the Runyon will be the last thing that I will sort of do in that official capacity. I will formally submit my resignation at the September meeting. And so at that point, Kevin Vaughn will step into the vortex / black hole, Denver Press Club president's role, and begin that. But that's what the plan is now. Are
you staying on the board, Dan?
I am going to do my best through the rest of this calendar year.
Do we have to elect you to that seat on the board?
I don't think so.
No,
No, we don't.
No. If I step, when I step down officially, Kevin Vaughn is empowered to appoint my replacement. I think subject to the approval of the board. I'd have to check that again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm going to stay on as long as I can, to do the work that you need. I may not be able to make all of them, but I've talked to Kevin about this, just the demands of school already. There's already way too much reading that I have to do, but we'll do my best, certainly, to help facilitate the transition, be available to answer questions, any number of things. I will still have a press club email address at danpetty@denverpressclub.org, so people can always find me there. But yeah, any questions about that? Okay, that concludes my president's report then. Jim Clark, building and structure updates.
Building. Well, in the past couple of months, we've gone back and forth with the general contractor about when it was going to be possible to get this job done. It looked a month ago like we were going to have.
Is he pranking us? He's pranking us.
Wait until the spring. Hello?
Jim, sorry, we're losing you. Blame Comcast. Can you just start over?
Use sign language.
All right, we're losing Jim.
Can you, is that better from a big
Yeah,
sound?
yep, yeah. Turn off the camera. Cool. Go ahead.
All right, I'll try again. That better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the general contractor went back and forth over the last month about when it was going to be possible to do this project because of the ability to get our hands on the replacement rooftop unit that we need. At first, he laid out a timeline that wouldn't start until the spring and would get done in like March, January, February, March. Then he reworked it and decided that late September through late November was possible. And so that's what we're going with now. It looks good. He thinks they can get all the work done before the unit comes in and then just drop the unit in as one of the last things they do. It's going to require that we get that boiler going again. So I've called Major Heating and Cooling. They're the guys who worked on it last time. It needs a little more work to get up and running. I really hoped we wouldn't have to do this, but unfortunately we do, because
Did we lose him?
not having, did you lose me again?
Yep.
Just for like 10 seconds. I wonder if Zoom's having issues.
So, long story short,
It's really short.
That was very short.
I'll get done, I think, September.
All right, Jim. Yeah, I don't know what's happened to the internet, but just having a hard time hearing you. That's okay.
Put the long story short into the chat. Just
Yeah, just drop it in the chat, Jim, when you have a chance. I know you also checked in with somebody about the flag, Jim. I don't know if you can hear me, but do you want to maybe give an update on that?
I did. I did check in with somebody on the flag, and he hasn't got back to me yet.
Okay.
On pricing.
Okay.
He's gonna go look at it.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Jim. Any questions for Jim? I recommend just dropping them into the chat so we can see those. Okay. Treasurer's report. Again, just going back to, I'll just share this again for the sake of clarity here with our checking account balances. A reminder that we are we do not have VOS financial updates because we're only doing financial reporting quarterly at the moment while we remain largely shut down. So, just a quick check into the account balances. on the DPC side, again, same story as always. We've got lots of funding in here. We'll have to move some stuff in the PBA to handle payroll. I do want to mention that, and I didn't mention this during my programming report, president's report rather, that Abby Seberg has continued to do work for us. And so, that's just another wage that we have just on the books that we are paying. But she's doing really good work. She's got a panel assembled for next week that we'll talk about more in programming, which is really good. But just know that the two people we're paying right now effectively are Abby and Jim. The other thing that I want to just mention, and I can't remember now if I mentioned this at the last meeting, but Chris, our caterer, is basically in no position whatsoever to pay any kind of rent at the moment. So, again, as like a revenue hit, we are not getting that. He has no business. He and I have basically just said, at this point, and I think this is probably something we need to vote on, and technically I could argue this is part of the PBA, but I'm bringing it up in the DPC, that we, essentially he agreed to the idea that every month he doesn't pay, it just adds another month onto the lease once he gets back to it. I asked him if he was going to be liquidating his business. Doesn't want to do that. Obviously things can change, but I think the feeling right now, and folks feel free to disagree with me, is that if we were to just open up the kitchen back up again, our ability to actually find somebody to take that space would be incredibly, incredibly difficult, if not impossible.
I wouldn't assume that.
So Jim, you disagree? You think we should potentially advertise and open up the space?
Well, not today, but I wouldn't assume that it would be hard to find somebody to fill that space. I think somebody else made the point last meeting that food trucks need these kind of spaces and caterers need these kind of spaces. So it's worth trying.
Great location, right?
Yeah. I think you could probably fill it. I think that my wild card on this is that whoever fills it, we're entrusting with the 100-year, long legacy of the building and the 100+ year long legacy of the club. So we'd have to be an exacting eye if we were to fill it. That's what was nice about Chris, is we knew that he wasn't going to set a fire. If Tom trusted him, he was heavily vetted. So if we were to open it up, I think it would take a lot of time to vet the right folks. There's a lot of good and bad in service.
I mean, am I hearing that we want to potentially put feelers out, with Craigslist postings? What are we talking about here? Go ahead, Skylar.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that we could extend a courtesy to Chris. There's too many open questions, right? I'd be comfortable doing that for a little while longer with Chris, but I think everybody who's not currently pivoted their business, who's in that line of work, I think they're going to have a hard time restarting. So I don't know if it's realistic to expect Chris is going to be able to come back in full swing of things, even in a year's time. And I don't think it'd be foolish to sit on that space for a year. But for 3 months, as a courtesy, I think that makes sense. While we do a word of mouth, conversations with folks. I would not put anything on Craigslist. No, I would ask, I'd ask the restaurant association, I'd ask the tavern association, the food trucks, whatever their association is, and do it that way.
I mean, to your point, if we were to walk in and somebody said, I could use a commercial kitchen right now and I'll pay you $1,500 a month, we would not say no to that. We'd say, look, our existing tenant can't pay. And okay. Something that Kevin and I can discuss more. All right, that's it for the treasurer's report. Moving next to committee reports, programming, Skylar and Noel.
Yeah, Dan, as Dan mentioned, has Abby Seberg on board, who's, I think, going to do Dan and Abby and I had a meeting, do a pretty good job of what's difficult about programming, which is actually herding the cats and working at the logistics and getting people to agree to do that programming. Abby's going to step up, and I think she'll do a really excellent job of that. Where I'm hoping I can get some buy-in from this group and others is to just, if we can generate ideas for programming as a group, we now have someone who's going to have the time required to chase them down to some extent. So, I don't know if this is a Google Doc or if it's a brief meeting before this meeting once a month or a separate half-hour Zoom call. I think Google Doc's probably the most elegant way, where we just get a bunch of ideas from folks who are plugged into the news and civic engagement communities. And then Abby and Dan and I, and then later Abby and me, and then later Abby can just run with those ideas while reaching out for any help that she needs. I think that's going to make the most sense for programming in this virtual environment. Abby's got the ability, she just doesn't have the Rolodex or context. We have the context on the Rolodex. So that would be my one ask of this group when it comes to programming is, I think, Dan, if you want to jump into, I know, we're trying to get 3 to 4 programs a month, all virtual. There's a lot of content out there. We just have to get it all organized for someone to chase it down.
Skylar, this is Laura. Would you be interested in collaborating with other organizations for programming?
Yeah, as long as there's a member benefit for our members. That's the big thing. Absolutely, I think that's a win-win. Anytime we can co-brand any event, we just want to make sure that if it's a ticketed event, Press Club members get some sort of accrued benefit to their membership.
Well, I'm thinking about, CoLab and the Colorado Media Project are doing, different kinds of programming. So there may be some, collaboration opportunity. I will keep an eye out for that. Makes it easier when it's virtual.
Yeah, it sure
to
does.
Collaborate.
Skylar, I'm going to just message a form to you that that I think was something Carol had set up. Well, I'll just drop it in the chat. Would this work?
No, that's so much. I hate that form. Everybody hates that form. It's way too much detail. All we really need is more of not a form, but just a Google Doc with, a list of ideas. They can be inchoate ideas that you can just drop in. Many of you are working in newsrooms. You might say, oh, I'd love it if we could have somebody, this would be a great idea. I just had a reporter do a story on this thing. That'd be great for a panel. I can suss those out and work with Abby to put some meat on the bones there, but just the list of things that you come across that are germane to our members throughout your day, and then have that as a bookmark. So I think it would just be a sheet, a Google sheet, Dan. And we can format it nicely, but I think that's all it needs to be. I don't think it needs to be this form.
Yeah, by way of example, we are assembling a panel for next week called The Art of the Interview that's going to feature Ryan Warner from Colorado Public Radio, Shaw Turner from Fox 31, Sam, whose last name I cannot pronounce properly, Sam T from the Denver Post, and Tina Griego to talk about how they get subjects to open up and in interviews. And I think it's a really good professional development thing. It's going to just be an hour over lunch from noon to 1 p.m. We'll record it, host it over a Zoom webinar, but we'll be promoting that shortly as well. That's like a good example. And that's something, I'll be honest, like I saw a similar panel at the National Press Club and I was like, oh, that might be interesting to do here. And again, as a member benefit, being able to post it publicly, record it is a good thing. The plan would be to charge for it for people who aren't members, and use it to bring in some revenue. So it's stuff like that. I mean, it does not have to be like difficult. Laura, I appreciate you bringing up the Colorado Media Project as well. I think it'd be great to collaborate on stuff like that.
Great.
Anything else, Skylar?
No, although I can jump over to social if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think I'm that. Well, and Noel, did you have anything you wanted to add on programming? No. On social.
If I have a meeting with Abby or whoever, I'd like to be included in that. Like this is the first I've heard of that, and that's not cool. If I'm going to be on the programming committee, I should be included in that.
That was, I believe you were out of the office, I think.
Well, sometimes when I'm out of the office, I'm like sitting at home because I'm on furlough. So I got all the time in the world, but you got to let me know before I can decide if I'm available or not.
Will do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Skylar.
Yeah, so on social media, we've had Grasslands do it on a pro bono basis, but they're just shifting people around. They've done it for 2 years. They've done a nice job. I think at the end of the month, we're going to take charge of our social again in terms of we're going to be responsible for content. Now, I think that's okay. The template that they set has a nice tone, and we've got an established voice. The real hard part is gone there, but I think Dan and I and others will need to work out who's posting when. We want to make sure we have some content out there 3-4 days a week. Because that's the rate we've been hitting with Grasslands on a pro bono contract.
They're in Skylar. I saw an email come through. I haven't read it. Like they're suspending everything, right?
Just through November. I can just give you the background on that. They're moving into a new building. They're shuffling some account managers around. They're just, they've adjusted to the pandemic. So it's not that they're scaling back. It's that they've got to reshuffle their team. And so their priorities are going to be their paid clients until they figure out if they're going to backfill a position or not. So the email that we got today said specifically through November, and then they're going to reassess, but definitely for September and October.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Any questions for Skylar? And then membership. So I have Jim Hill on there. That's partly because Jim and I met before this, and Jim is going to be taking over a lot more of the membership duties. Now that I'm stepping back, he's going to learn the Nexus system, which we've already gone over a little bit. But, again, the biggest task is, I think, starting with some of Abby's help, but also working to find the people who still owe dues and figuring out like what their membership status. So they want to stay, and if we don't hear from them in a couple weeks, like just removing them from the roles. But Jim, looking forward to your help in that arena again, especially as we transition here. Is there anything you want to say, Jim Hill?
No, not really. I agreed to this about 2 hours ago, so we'll see where we go from here.
Voluntold. That's how it goes.
More importantly, have you gotten any new members in the last 2 hours?
He got 4 of them, technically.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim.
No problem.
Jim.
We are grateful that Jim is stepping forward. And as I emphasized to him, and Skylar, you know this, and Noel, you know this, like the 3 pillars here, I think, from a good strategy standpoint are strong membership, providing them benefits through programming and professional development, and then, of course, the fundraising pillar, which we talked tonight about with Albie. All of that stuff is really important. Any questions about any of the committees? All right, next I'll go to new business. If anybody has any new business they'd like to raise.
I don't think it needs to go on the agenda, but and it sounds like we've sorted a lot of this out anyway, but as we're thinking about our next executive director, or if it's a fundraising director, or if it's a consultant, I know that the Press Association is going through this right now for their ED. So I don't know, I'm not involved with that, obviously, but there might be templates for, but they're probably gonna have a pile of resumes after that. Again, after this meeting, I don't think it's as important that we chart a course on that ourselves, but.
So they are.
I'm sorry, what are you asking, Skylar?
Well, we're very similar in terms of mission to the Press Association, although the mechanics are a lot different, right? And they're going through an ED search. So there's going to be talent that's drawn to that that might end up.
Oh, yeah, I'm on the search committee for the CPA ED, so
that's what I figured. Yeah.
I can pass along anybody who doesn't get. Yeah. Happy to.
Laura, they are working.
So far, no.
Laura, they're specifically working through the Open Media Foundation to help recruit. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I have to say that the Open Media Foundation is providing. They've got a system. They've got somebody who is going through applications and creating a spreadsheet and noting, highlights of interesting people and that sort of thing. And then they schedule the interviews with people. It really is quite a slick operation. It's not, an executive search company. It's not that level of service, but it is a level of service that, and I believe it's free. I'll double check that. Someone said that and I was shocked by it, but that's why I remember it. But I'll double check because it seems hard to believe. But I would recommend, if we get to the point where we're accepting resumes for our position, that we consider using OMF.
Yeah, I had never heard of it until, I sit on the CPA board, and I had never heard of it until I had seen what they were doing. I didn't even know that was an option. So I'll be curious to see how that plays out, Laura. If they find that it was really valuable, then yeah, that would be good.
Right.
All right.
And I can tell you that they used OMF. They used the same process when they hired me for CoLab, and being on that end of it, on the, applicant end of it, it was very slick and very professional and impressive. So I would recommend it.
And would they be able to find people like specific, like let's say we go through this whole process with Albie, he says, look, I'm not right for the job, but you should absolutely hire a fundraiser, et cetera, et cetera. Like, could they find people like that?
No, they are not an executive search service. They are not that. They can say, we'll post your position where you want us to post your position, and we have a system to receive the applications and organize them. But they are not going to say, oh, we'll go recruit the kind of applicants that you want. They are not that.
Okay, got it. So they handle like just all the mechanics and sort of.
Right, the mechanics and logistics is what
which is a lot of work.
Yes, yes.
Good to know. Yeah, that time frame for that hire for the Press Association, Laura, is that like November-ish?
Actually, I think we're moving more quickly than that because we're trying to do interviews. Well, I guess maybe it is November. You're right, because we're doing interviews in October. So yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I'll be curious how that works out. Okay. Anything else?
Me too.
Yeah, it's kind of important for you. Anything else from folks? Megan, do you have any clarifying question? Oh, Megan stepped out briefly. I was going to say, oh, there you are.
She's back.
Megan, do you have any clarifying questions that you need, minutes related, maybe that we went through too quickly or anything like that?
No, I took Mavis Beacon typing when I was growing up. I don't want to impress anybody here, but so I got it.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Good.
All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Larry, you're quick on the draw there.
Yes.
I wonder why. You must have a couple things going on or something like that.
One or two.
All right, motion by Larry, second by?
Second.
Everybody.
Second by Noel. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, aye. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Dan.
Take
Have a
care,
good night.
everyone.
Dan, have you already
Bye.
jumped off?
Nope, I can stay around. If anybody has questions, other gripes, questions, accusations, I'm here.
Dan, I was just going to say maybe I should reach out to Albie and maybe you and I should try to get together with him in the next week or so.
Yep. Friday, Saturday is classes, so just as long as it's not then.
Yeah, weeknight's better for me actually if it works for you.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, just I think Monday at that time is good. I just our Runyon meetings are that same night, so I can do something after that.
Okay. I'll stay in touch.
Okay. Larry, did you have anything about Larry's still there? I don't know. Can't figure out if Larry's there or frozen.
He looks like he's there.
He looks really happy.
Yeah, because we let him go.
Because he knows a cocktail is
30 minutes earlier. Oh, there he goes. Okay.
All right, I'm leaving now.
Okay.
All right. I'm leaving.
Nice.
See you guys.
Nice seeing you guys.
Likewise.